What if I told you that the band that never fit in was punished for it? Bang Tango wrote their own rules, got shelved, scattered, and still clawed their way back, only to collapse again when it finally mattered. Here's how they dodged every cliche and still got burned.
Like, subscribe, thank you.
Before the car wrecks, the label betrayals, and the psychological unraveling, there were 5 guys in LA with a sound nobody could pin down. Joe Lusté wasn't some carbon copy hair metal howler. He sang like Prince fronting the New York Dolls. Kyle didn't thump out bass lines. He grooved like he'd been raised in a Detroit strip club. In their early demos pulsed with sleaze, soul, and danger, equal parts Motley Crue and Sly Stone. And live, they moved. This wasn't some kind of static posing in tight leather. They twisted, stomped, and slithered across stages like they were conducting a seance with every riff. So in 1989, they landed a deal with MCA and dropped Psycho Cafe. For one hot minute, the whole world blinked. Videos like Someone Like You spun heavy on MTV. Critics didn't know what to make of them, but the fans were feeling it. It was all dirty and sexy in a weird way that felt new. Too new. Because just when they seemed ready to break, something snapped. And it wasn't just the strings on Joe's mic stand. What happened next would haunt them for decades. So within months of forming, Bang Tango wasn't just another flyer on a streetlight. They were actually packing clubs, turning heads, and stirring confusion in the offices of every A&R guy trying to slot them into a genre that just didn't exist yet. Joe Lusté rolled into LA in 1987 with a voice built for chaos. Half banshee, half soul preacher, and one goal: find a band twisted enough to match it. The wreckage of a local group called City Slick led him straight into the orbit of guitar player Mark Knight and bassist Kyle, who had already begun welding their vision into something raw and unclassifiable. And by 1988, with the addition of guitarist Kyle Stevens and drummer Tig Kettler, Bang Tango wasn't just born, it was fully formed. Sonic Frankenstein stitched together from Aerosmith's sleaze, Prince grooves, and a twitchy, bloodshot funk that no other LA band really dared to touch. And while every other act on the strip was raiding Nikki Sixx's closet and Xeroxing Poison's playbook, Bang Tango sounded like they escaped from a velvet-lined dungeon 2 blocks south of reality, with a groove too heavy for glam, too melodic for thrash, too freaky for FM radio. There's no trend riding here. They're chasing a sound that nobody had names for yet, and dragging an unsuspecting city behind them. But unfortunately, genre-defying originality in 1988 Los Angeles was a dangerous way to play the game. MCA did not discover Bang Tango through polished demos or chart-chasing singles. They heard Live Injection, a sweaty, unfiltered slab of club fury that sounded like it had been recorded mid-brawl. The rawness was the appeal. The energy was not staged, it was barely contained, and they signed him, fast. And to produce their debut, MCA paired them with a young, relatively unknown name, Howard Benson. And at the time, nobody knew that Howard would go on to polish acts like P.O.D., Daughtry, and My Chemical Romance into radio gold. Back then, he was just another studio rat trying to capture lightning. And with Psycho Cafe, he damn near did. Released in 1989, the album was a Molotov cocktail lobbed into a rock scene overdosing on hairspray and recycled choruses. Someone Like You hit MTV like a fever dream. Part sleaze anthem, part dance track, entirely alien to anything on the dial. The verses gave a bit of a nod to Billy Idol, but in a very strange way. And that's the thing about the record. It had swing, grime, had blood on its boots. Critics raised their eyebrows, and fans were leaning in. The label still weren't sure what the hell they had on their hands. And behind the scenes, unfortunately, the warning signs were already flickering. But Psycho Cafe was a hard-hitting, solid debut. Attack of Life opened the album like a smackdown at closing time, ripping through with punk attitude, barbed wire riffs. Love Injection, Shotgun Man oozed those funk inflections. The rhythm section was locked in, and at the center of the storm, Joe Lusté, shirtless, howling, and totally unhinged. That voice of his demanded attention. Somewhere between a Tom Kiefer snarl and Axl's shriek, with just enough sleaze to make it dangerous. Nobody else in LA sounded like that. And of course, Someone Like You. That chorus shot straight into your chest. Joe going nuclear with that range, while the rest of the band dipped the whole thing in that swagger. MTV took the bait. Headbangers Ball spun it into rotation hell, and suddenly Bang Tango were no longer just weird club gods, they were actually national. Billboard peak at number 57 for the single, number 58 for the album. It wasn't a takeover, but definitely enough to smell the next level. And then the sharks started circling. The LA Times, never shy with a knife, crowned them one of the 10 greatest one-hit wonders of the hair metal era. praise dressed like a punch in the face. They made an impact, but that tag, it stuck. No matter what came next, the industry would keep treating Bang Tango like a fluke that really never should have happened in the first place. But what followed really wasn't sabotage, it was something worse. Confusion with a budget. MCA had signed Bang Tango off the strength of a live tape, but once Psycho Cafe dropped, they panicked. The band did not sound like Poison. They did not dress like Warrant. They didn't move like anybody else on the brochure. The label pushed the single, sure, but after that, nothing. No roadmap or push, just a bunch of suits scratching their heads at a band that didn't color the inside the neon lines. And the band, of course, wasn't making it easy either. Success, however fleeting, brought egos. And inside the studio, Howard Benson found himself shouting into a void. He later admitted that the guys were just dead set on doing things their own way. No feedback, no course correction, just pure unfiltered Bang Tango. And Benson swore they could have exploded if they hadn't fought every suggestion tooth and nail. Even Psycho Cafe's sound became ammo for critics. Some hailed its grittiness, and others called it a lo-fi mess. They said the drums clanged like garbage lids, the guitars buzzed like a chainsaw down a hallway, and what passed off as raw to fans came off as amateurish to radio programmer. They had attitude, but didn't have polish, not the kind that sells. What stung the most wasn't that the record flopped, it's that nobody even noticed. And by 1991, Bang Tango had cleaned up their chaos and channeled it into Dancing on Coals, a record that could have been their vindication. They brought in John Jansen, the guy with credits alongside Lou Reed, Television, not exactly Sunset Strip royalty, but that was the point. This time they wanted nuance and not noise. The result? A record that actually had bones. Joe Lestat tightened his phrasing without losing his edge. Grooves ran deeper, the riffs snapped harder, and the songwriting had that lean, nasty confidence of a band that finally knew what it was doing. Critics caught on. Some called it their best work. Fans who dug past the surface swore by it. Tracks like Soul to Soul and Midnight Struck hit with precision. Perfect blend of groove and grit, dancing between Chili Peppers' rhythm and Aerosmith's style attitude. Just enough Seattle murk to feel timely without pandering to it. But the timing was already poison, no pun intended. By the time Dancing on Coals hit shelves, the glam scene was hemorrhaging. Nirvana's Nevermind would drop later that year and gut the entire genre. Labels pivoted overnight. Radio followed. And Bang Tango? They were stranded. Too funky for grunge, too smart for hair metal, too weird for mainstream. The album crawled to number 113 on the charts. No tour push, no video rotation, just radio silence. By the time the record surfaced, the band it came from was already a ghost. The pressure wasn't just external. Inside of Bang Tango, the seams were splitting. And after wrapping their third album, Love After Death, the vibe had changed. The industry wasn't listening, audience vanishing. Then Kyle Stevens quit. With one half of their signature guitar attack gone. No scandal or statement, just a quiet exit that felt like the air leaving the room. And the album Love After Death should have been the redemption arc. Critics were digging it. They heard it and they said it was bold, bleak, and fearless. Their darkest work yet. Layered, moody, emotionally raw. The groove's still there, but buried deeper, wrapped in that melancholy and menace. Joe Lestat never sounded more human or more haunting. Instead of chasing hits, they were exorcising demons. And yet, MCA sat on it. 2 years. That's how long the finished album gathered dust. No promo, rollout, just silence. And when it finally crept out in 94, it was not on US shelves. Got a quiet drop in Europe and Japan, markets that still gave a crap. But back home, nothing. By then, Bang Tango had been filed under yesterday's news. So with no label support, no tour, one guitar down, the band did what most people didn't even notice. They stopped. No announcements or farewell tours, just vanished. But even Resurrection came with baggage. After the implosion, the members of Bang Tango scattered like embers. Kyle dove headfirst into the underworld of industrial sleaze, joining the Newly Deads alongside Faster Pussycat's Take Me Down. It was darker, grimier music that sounded like strip club speakers giving out. Mark Knight and Tig Kettler went on a different route entirely, forming the Worry Beads, a bluesier, roots-driven project, felt a million miles away from the groove metal stuff that they helped create. And Joe Lestat could not sit still. For a minute, he was fronting LA Guns, filling in with the same reckless attitude that once made him unmissable. But the Bang Tango name, that wasn't dead. Not really. Not when it still meant something to the kids who had worn out their Psycho Cafe cassettes. So in 1998, Joe and Kyle cracked the coffin open. They dropped a live album on Cleopatra Records. Raw, rough, but definitely defiant. Less of a comeback and more of a pulse check. And people responded. Hardcore fans were still there. Not millions, but enough. The tapes kept coming. Greatest Tricks, United and Live, compilation after compilation, keeping the logo visible as the scene that birthed them totally turned to ash. But no matter how far he roamed, Joe couldn't escape the ghost in the room. Bang Tango's name still loomed like unfinished business. So in 2001, he took his biggest swing since the fall. Teamed up with then unknown shredder DJ Ashba to form Beautiful Creatures. And this effort wasn't sleaze rock. This was alt metal soaked in modern grit, aimed squarely at a new generation of headbangers. The gamble worked. They signed to Warner Brothers, landed a slot on Ozfest, dropped a debut that roared with fresh venom. Joe was screaming again, but this time through a digital megaphone, dragging his voice into the post-grunge wasteland with surprising authority. They followed it up with Deuce in 2005, but the real twist? Bang Tango never really went away. While Beautiful Creatures carved its niche, Joe kept dragging the old name forward like a sacred relic. Bang Tango became this revolving door of hired guns and cult players. Anthony Fox on guitar, Alex Grossi. The lineup changed, sometimes mid-tour, but the mission stayed the same. Joe was the anchor, the mouthpiece, really the last man standing. Between 2004 and 2011, this new incarnation coughed up 3 more studio records, ready to go, from the hip, and pistol whipped in the Bible Belt. Each release felt like a dispatch from a different war. Scrappier, looser, bit more unpredictable. Mixed reviews, the tours were leaner, but Joe, he never flinched. Because what came next would finally pull back the curtain and expose the real toll all those years had. June 2011. A Chicago bartender named Drew 48 is blasting Psycho Cafe on repeat at his dive bar, trying to hype up a gig his boss booked. Bang Tango's playing. Nobody's exactly lining up. 48 spends $50 on the jukebox out of sheer loyalty, or maybe morbid curiosity. So when the band shows up to town to record Pistol Whipped in the Bible Belt, 48 meets them in person for the first time. Joe spots the camera in 48's hand and opens with 2 questions in order. What's that cool thing in your hand? Do you know where I could find some weed? And that was the vibe. By the end of the night, 48 had racked up a 250 bar tab for the band. In return, he got access. A few days filming in the studio, maybe a little YouTube doc, nothing major. But something shifted. As 48 kept rolling, the real story started bleeding through. This wasn't just about a new album. It was about everything the band had become, everything they had lost, what it looked like to keep going when the dream already died. So the making of video got scrapped. In its place, Attack of Life, the Bang Tango movie. A documentary that would take 5 years to complete and nearly rip what remained of the band in half. The problem was not the praise, it was the mirror that this held up. Drew, armed with nothing but a camcorder, tax return, zero clue of what he was getting into, spent the next 4 years buried in footage. Over 400 hours of tape, most of it unlabeled chaos, interviews, hotel ramblings, studio scraps, existential breakdowns. Anu Gunn stepped in as the cinematographer and co-producer, helping wrangle the LA material. But it was 48 in the trenches, hacking through years of misfires and egos and untold stories with no map or manual. And when Attack of Life finally emerged, it wasn't a puff piece. It was a time capsule soaked in booze and unfiltered truth. The band's history unraveled on screen. Equal parts comedy, tragedy, and surreal disaster. Viewers got everything, from Kyle's brutal, near-fatal car crash in the late 90s, to the now legendary night a superfan fronted the band on stage while Joe laid in a hospital bed, meaning not a single original member performed under the Bang Tango banner that night. That actually happened. Critics loved it. They called it honest. It didn't just document the death of hair metal, it exposed how Bang Tango had been wedged between 2 musical earthquakes, never fully belonging to either, and crushed beneath both. But when Joe saw the final cut, things exploded. The final act of Attack of Life did not pull punches. It posed the hard question. Was Joe Liste keeping Bang Tango alive out of loyalty or denial? The footage didn't answer for him, it just showed the toll. The empty clubs, the endless lineup swaps, the strain behind that grin. Viewers debated, some saw defiance, others saw delusion. Joe Liste didn't debate anything. He went scorched earth, blasting the film publicly and accusing 48 of twisting the narrative. Said it was a drunk decision he'd come to regret. Claimed it made him look like a punchline in his own story. And maybe in some moments it did. But Drew 48, ever diplomatic, didn't fire back. He pointed out the obvious. When Liste shot those scenes, he was in the grip of something. Booze, burnout, maybe seeing it unfiltered just hit too close. Meanwhile, Universal Music refused to clear key tracks. I mean, come on, it's universal music. What do you expect? With the official release frozen in legal purgatory, 48 went rogue. In January 2016, he dropped the whole film on YouTube. No fanfare, no ads, 480p, and unapologetic. And it remains there, grainy, immortal, a bootleg gospel of a band that never fit the mold. And then the twist that nobody saw coming. In 2015, Drew 48, bartender, filmmaker, fan, was asked to join the band as their second guitar player. The same guy who documented the wreckage ended up inside of it, riding shotgun for 2 more years of insanity. But nobody could have predicted what was waiting just around the corner. Late 2019, out of nowhere, the press release hit. The original Bang Tango lineup, Joe Liste, Mark Knight, Kyle Stevens, Kyle, and Tig Kettler, was actually reuniting. After decades of rotating door lineups, near-death moments, public implosions, these 5 names back together felt like a glitch in the Matrix. For fans who stuck it out, it was total vindication. For the band, it was something even more rare, closure with teeth. Liste's statement hit like gospel. The 5 of us have a bond, musically and personally, that doesn't come along every day. No cash grab or nostalgia bait, just 5 guys finally admitting that really they weren't finished. And on January 20th, 2020, at the Whiskey A Go-Go, they totally delivered. The same haunted room where it all began, now packed to the rafters with diehards, skeptics, and ghosts. Rehearsals had been electric. Everybody said it. The spark came back the second they plugged in. 20 songs, 2 hours, no backing tracks. It was everything they were supposed to be, and just as they were preparing to build on that high, the entire world would shut down. The message wasn't subtle. It was a funeral with a casket left open, and Joe Liste left out. Just one show. That's all the reunion got before it collapsed under the weight of everything they tried to outrun. In November 2021, Mark Knight went public, said he was done. The magic had curdled. The chemistry did not hold up. Old grudges, silly reasons, and fresh infighting surfaced almost immediately. And the pandemic that just poured cement in the cracks. No gigs or travel, no momentum. The dream they teased at the whiskey died before it had time to exhale. But not for everybody. Knight and drummer Tig Kettler stayed in the ring, shifting their focus to Mark Knight and the unsung heroes. The name said it all. Less of a side project, more pure statement. Their next album quietly reunited 4/5 of Bang Tango's classic lineup. Knight, Kettler, Kyle on bass, and even Kyle Stevens showed up. The only one missing? Liste. There were no press releases or diss tracks, just a lineup that said what nobody wanted to say out loud. Bang Tango could still function, just not with the guy who kept the name alive after all those years. But even as the lights dimmed, the voice at the center of it all refused to go silent. August 2023. Joe Liste, the last man flying the Bang Tango flag, was rushed to an Arizona hospital after suffering a stroke. Decades of battling hypertension had finally caught up with him, and his medication had failed him, as he put it. And the news hit hard. It wasn't a backstage meltdown or lineup drama, this was life and death. His wife Jessica launched a GoFundMe to cover the mountain of medical bills, and fans, those who followed every twist in this chaotic ride, stepped up. Those who live in America, you'll totally understand. Those who don't, insurance might pay a little bit if we're lucky. Otherwise, we try to crowdfund it or just operate it on ourselves. But Liste was moved to a rehab facility, stabilized and treated, rebuilding from the ground up, one breath and one step at a time. And even then, laid out in a hospital bed, he found the strength for one more shot across the bow. Don't count me out. All caps. Classic Joe. That voice, battered but unbroken, still dared the world to bet against him. Because that was always the through line in Bang Tango's story. No matter the breakups, the flops, the vanishing label support, or near-death misses, Liste never stopped swinging. The band might be scattered, the music may have quieted down, but that war cry still echoes. Bang Tango isn't dead, it just won't die. To my subscribers, thank you so much. You freaking rock. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, take that subscribe button, throw it like a frisbee, and smack the like button as well. Join the family, and I want to thank you so much for watching.